Hi, welcome to the 1 in 20 show. I'm your host, Evan Rogers, and today I'm joined by Justin Horwitz. Justin is a multi-talented musician and artist who has been music directing shows since he was 15. He moved to New Jersey to pursue musical direction at Rider University in Lawrenceville. He recently created a performance group at Rider called the Broncway for students who feel they've been marginalized by the school they're attending. The Broncway puts on 5 performances a year and sponsors cabarets, fundraisers, and classes. He is currently working for the summer stock theater, the Millbrook Playhouse in Pennsylvania, in which he was hired to play for 6 shows with a very brief rehearsal process in one summer. He is a very busy man, and I'm so glad that he could be on our show today. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, very happy to have you.
I feel blessed to be here.
Thanks, I guess. I know that you started out with Broadway Bound, and I have to shout out Mama Susan, who's in the room, Susan Thomas. And and I wanted to know how that process kind of instilled a love for theater in you from a young age. And you're going to say this again, because I know we did it before, but you're going to go for it again.
So the piano teacher I had at the time, whose name was John, had sort of cottoned on to the fact that by the time I was like 15, that a classical piano route wasn't something that would be inherently effective in teaching me, and that my route to gaining what was technique, quote unquote, had always been through musical theater. So he introduced me to Susan, who I believe he was giving lessons to your kids at the time, right?
So how old were you then?
I was 15.
15. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe a little younger, maybe 14 or 15. And Susan's theater company at the time was doing something called Pirates and Penzance, which is a charming old Gilbert and Sullivan
That's
show.
what I think when I hear that.
That was originally written in 1879, and it was brought over for its first production in America in 1902, and it has a very sort of long legacy in sort of the lineage of
beautiful
musical
baritone
theater,
parts,
which
and bass parts,
beautiful bass and baritone parts, and tenor parts.
Yeah, as well.
As musical theater roles do have
every range
voice types.
There you go.
And John hired me to play for some of the rehearsals, which he wouldn't be there for.
At 15.
At 15.
So you must have been a real good old boy to have been able to play that well at that age, you know?
No. But I believe he thought it would motivate me to do better inherently, which it did, because what I discovered is that the thing that I found very attractive about playing for musical theater was both the inherent social aspect of it. Yeah. So it wasn't so isolated in the sense that you go, well, Timmy, here's a Beethoven piece. Sit down in a room for 3 weeks, practice by yourself, alone in your own sort of artistry,
and then bring it,
bring it and play it once. Right. But the nature of it was inherently social. So in essence, we'd go to rehearsal, we'd play, and that people were expecting me to perform at a certain level so that they could do their job correctly. And I found that motivated me to be accountable for my own skill.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Which was though I couldn't quite pinpoint, obviously, that at the time. But that's what it ended up being, was that I was finally able to find a way that it felt like there were immediate stakes to learning music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then from there, I started doing the summer camps with Susan. I think the first one we did was Charlie Brown and Wizard of Oz. And that was when I was that was when I was 15.
Wow.
The following semester, I sort of had my first experience at my high school when I played for my production of Into the Woods.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah. Music, is that when you started music directing? It was around there, or you were just in the cast?
Well, originally I was in the cast, but as happens in high schools, we didn't have a piano player. So my drama teacher at the time was like, "Who here can play piano?" And I was like,
"I can,
I suppose." And then he went, "You do it." And so I took the score home over the summer, and
hard score to play too. It's not a walk in the park.
With John, I did my best.
Yeah. It's a toughie.
it was nice that it was a Sondheim show because, at a
Right.
certain point you can just bang on the piano and people will be like, it's Sondheim.
Definitely. Yeah. Yep.
So
Definitely.
what's interesting about the show Into the Woods is I've done Into the Woods 5 times, all at very different points in my career. Mm-hmm. At almost every level of theater that you can do Into the Woods at.
Wonderful.
I've done Into the Woods Junior with Susan's kids. We did that as a seance into after school enrichment, which was charming. And
That's funny.
I've done it. I did it twice at West Ranch. It was the first show I ever did when I was 15. And it was the last show I did at West Ranch before I moved to New Jersey.
Okay.
So in that sense, just in the setting, it was a very nice way of bookending the totality of my growth in 7 years.
That's cool.
Additionally, I've done a community theater production of Into the Woods. I've done a regional production of Into the Woods.
Wow.
And an equity production of Into the Woods.
Wow, so you've been around the bend with.
So
with
I've done
Sondheim.
that show at almost every level
Isn't your
and
username
every production
Sondheim's...
budget level that you can.
Yeah.
Which is strange.
Yeah.
But it's been very interesting as I've been able to mark very specific phases in my musical growth.
Yeah.
Each and every time that I've done it. You know?
Yeah. Your Sondheim's. What's your username? Sondheim's Little Helper.
It's funny, right?
It works. It works. No, that's wonderful. And then now that you just, you had just mentioned moving to New Jersey to get your degree, because you had mentioned to me just in the copy that you had sent me about yourself that you were coming to the point where you're hitting roadblocks because you couldn't get hired because you weren't union or because you didn't have your degree.
At a certain point, whether you're an actor or a musician or a stagehand, really, at a certain point you run into the roadblock where to make a sustainable living income, for the most part, if you're not touring or doing some other venue-specific that's done by a major production company, it's very hard to make enough money to sustain a workable income, which is why unions are simultaneously so beneficial to performers, but also so powerful.
Right.
Because they essentially are able to give you things like a sustainable living wage, health care, dental.
Benefits, that you need. Yeah.
Stuff that actors need to maintain their lifestyle, And I was not union, and I did not see the point in becoming union when I was 21. Yeah. Because, once you join the union, it's generally frowned upon for you to do things which aren't union. And the and the point of this is on face value so that the union can protect the people that are in it, but more specifically, they want to keep their workforce contained in a place that they are able to track things and get data and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
My move also came on the heels of what was then Equity's 99-seat decision in LA, which changed the game in an awful lot of ways. Not so much for me inherently because I'm not an actor, but I do know I did have a lot of friends at the time who just could not find work anymore because there wasn't enough work to go around in LA after Equity ruled. But also a lot of places stopped doing musicals and stopped hiring musicians. So I started to find it much more difficult to get work. Yeah, that was another big factor, especially since I wasn't union, so I thought to myself that at that point it would be a smart decision to move on to the next sort of phase of what I hoped my life would become. And I was very lucky that the school I ended up going to, which was Rider, was very strategically placed in the sense that it was about 45 minutes from New York by train and 30 minutes by car from Philadelphia. Right. Two very big hubs of theater. Yes, definitely. For anyone that's watching that scene, the Philadelphia theater scene is one of the relatively newer scenes, but it is vastly becoming something that's very big.
Yeah, I've heard. That's wonderful.
And that's sort of a place that's worth being. So I thought that Rider would be a good place where I could sit. Yeah. Because I got a lot of money to go there, relatively financial free for 3 years, and build connections outwards as opposed to landing in a place where I didn't have any connections and having to scramble.
Which
so it
is
was able to be
dangerous.
more
Yeah.
systematic. You
Right.
know?
Well, and I understand that from the perspective of you do need, like you were saying, you do need that next step. Like in a lot of ways, growing up and wanting to move forward, you don't realize how much a degree can help. You don't realize that those are valuable stepping stones that will eventually lead you in a way that maybe isn't 100% what you want, but it's definitely getting there, you know?
And the weird thing about it is that you can have, and you see this less in like the music world or the music world that I live in, but you see this a lot in the performance world is, you know, you see someone that grew up in Oklahoma and did community theater all their life and they're just incredible and they moved to New York and 2 months later they booked a Broadway show.
Yeah.
No training, no nothing. And people go,
yeah.
You know, whoa.
Yeah.
But then you have people that have gone through a prestigious BFA that are just struggling to gain traction. So at a certain point, people turn around and go, what's the point of a degree? And for me, what I ended up figuring out is that really the point of getting a degree in anything is that it buys you a certain amount of credibility in your expertise on a subject.
And money.
Not so much in the performance realm of it.
Yeah, that's true.
But
more in the business
when you
side.
see like a BFA from Carnegie Mellon on someone's university, there's a certain expectation of what prerequisite skill they will have at the end of their BFA training. And the better the school, the higher the expectation is of that skill level, which is why it's worth going to a good school, because people see things and assume, you know?
That's a huge part of life. It is so interesting to think, you know, people follow after, like we were talking about NYU before we even started, people follow after what's been known to be good. USC for film. I'm a film guy, so I know that world has always been, SC for film. But now they're taking a nosedive because it's just the names that were associated, but that could work in your favor.
The same
like
thing's
you're
happening
saying.
with BOCO now, is they recently changed management in the school.
Right, because Berkeley bought them out, right?
Right.
Yeah,
interesting. Berkeley, much like Broadway Bound Players, kind of has an open door. You know what I mean? You know, it's interesting how things shift in that realm. You know what I mean? Right. And it's also interesting that names mean something to people. The names on your resume mean something. Legitimacy.
Yeah. It adds legitimacy to somebody who is otherwise nobody, right? And that's how everybody comes up.
A lot of the time in like the audition circuit also in like New York and stuff, people do make decisions based on resumes. You know what I mean? There's an awful amount of information that actors are able to communicate in their resume, such as what types of roles they are able to play based on what they have played, the training they have received, who they have worked for, and what someone can generally expect their work ethic to be. That's why it's such a big no to lie on your resume. Wow. Because it's something that people are using as sort of a litmus test of you. Right.
So really you could dig your own grave by, exactly.
And that happened to one of the poor girls at the summer stock contract that I was working at this summer, is that she professed to have some skills on her resume that didn't turn out to be what we expected it to be, which then puts both sort of the theater and her in an awkward position.
I could see that.
You know?
100%. Interesting.
And that's something that a good program often teaches you how to do, is how to communicate information subliminally like that through your resume. And Ryder is a very good musical theater program, which is one of the reasons that I decided to end up going there, is that my reasoning was that it seemed logical to me that any music direction program, and a music direction is a relatively new major and it's only been around for about 3 or 4 years. Because it's only been relatively recent that music direction has gained quote-unquote legitimacy as a viable means of educating yourself musically. It always happened that you educated yourself musically and that music direction was something you
took on,
fell into doing. And because of that, there wasn't a graded curriculum into how to become a music director, because every music director tends to be different and comes from different backgrounds and has different preferences, and your taste and musical influence as a music director tends to factor very heavily into your style and the decisions you make, and furthermore, why you make the decisions you make.
Interesting.
So I figured that it would be a very smart idea to go to the program that I thought would have the best BFA program.
Right.
And Ryder, to my perception,
Yeah.
had the best BFA program out of any of the schools that were offering a musical theater BM, a Bachelor of Music.
Right. Okay.
So the way
a lot went into that decision, sounds like. Yeah, just like making sure you found the right school, because I know that that's kind of what you mentioned in your
but the process itself wasn't an incredibly difficult one, because there were only 3 programs that existed.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like
One
a
of the 3.
a dozen BFA programs
Sure.
that you had to like sort of rifle through to find your little diamond. It was
Sure.
like, this is it. And
Yeah.
I knew that 2 of the schools I didn't particularly want to go to based on location and the quality of the program. And so I just sort of fell into writer.
Yeah.
I got a very good feeling from the people who were running my program at the time that I auditioned, which also really factored into my decision to go there.
Right. Interesting.
I saw one of their shows when I auditioned, and I thought it was very good.
Yeah.
And I also knew, we were talking about it, Louise, who I already knew ran a theater company out in the Bronx that could get me work, and it was it seemed like a good place to be and to build roots.
Absolutely.
Because I didn't want to plant roots in another place and then to move again, because it was really hard for me to leave LA for that reason, because I felt like I had finally planted roots and I had started to gain the traction I was trying to achieve at such a young age, which was very difficult. And so my reasoning was that ultimately I wanted to end up in New York, which is ultimately why I left, but it was a very hard decision to sort of pick up and leave, you know?
Absolutely. Well, that was a mouthful. That's wonderful to hear, like some of your decisions behind it. And this goes into my next question is, as Ryder is now kind of climbing the ranks, considered in the top 10 for musical theater schools. I was going to ask you, we kind of already addressed why you chose it.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to go into a little bit of what they stand for, maybe, and some other reasons why it was like, yes, I want to go there,
Well, the thing about a lot of programs is that the way the program at Ryder works is they sort of house you with the BFA kids. And the way that works is you take more or less the same classes minus dance. So they substitute the dance classes for music classes, right?
Okay.
Because you need, obviously, a music education,
right?
But you also need a general awareness of how both drama works and how the consciousness of the actor interacts with drama.
Sure.
Because, depending on what your philosophy is, the largest job of a music director is to be able to communicate effectively enough with actors in order to mitigate any musical problems which may occur from the personality of the actor.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. No, I absolutely know
so
what
communication
you mean.
becomes a very big part, and being able to anticipate problems before they occur.
Which is, by the way, not to interrupt you, but by the way, that is such a consistency on this show. You wouldn't be, you'd be surprised how many people that I know in the musical theater world that have been on here have said the exact same thing. It doesn't matter. Obviously it does matter. You need the right training, but what I mean is it all comes down to communication and how well you're effectively able to communicate and anticipate exactly what you said. And everybody says that. And it's true. That's what you pay the money for.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
It's incredibly true. And it's also true to the extent, at least where I'm concerned, is that there's a lot of signs that performers give off that tips people who are trained to watch for these things in the know as to what their general countenance will be.
Like subconsciously. Just kind of watching.
But things like, are they a performer that tends to need self-validation? Are they ones that you should sort of leave alone and sort of let them do what you need to do?
Because all those things matter.
They matter to the extent that I tend to believe the job of a music director is less artistic and more administrative at a certain level of theater. right?
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
obviously, when you start doing kids theaters, a music director has to deal with things like, wow, I was going to teach the song to Timmy, but he has a soccer tournament, so Timmy's not going to be here today, you know?
Yeah,
And that's
yep,
another thing. And then
yep.
Timmy shows up, and Timmy's like, I want a sandwich. And you're like, well, Timmy, you can't have a sandwich. We got to, like,
I
learn
hate
the
to
song.
tell you,
You know what I mean?
I hate to tell you that doesn't stop with kids theater.
You know,
That
right,
goes up with
right. You know
high
what I
school
mean?
theater and
Well,
yeah.
but then in like junior high and high school theater, you have conversations like, well, Timmy, here's sort of the ways that you communicate through song,
sure.
and this is
Certainly.
how tone influences sort
Certainly.
of intention, and these are tools in your toolbox. And
Yeah.
then if Timmy gets old enough and is blessed to be accepted into a BFA program, there'll be things like, well, Timmy, we expect that you're able to do these things, right? And that if we sense you can't, we will ask you why, or what tools do you need, and are you lacking?
Yeah.
And the job of the university is to cement all of the tools at Timmy's disposal.
Right.
So that by the time Timmy blessedly becomes equity at age 23 and is at a theater, let's call it Millbrook Playhouse, the music director, me, will come in with the assumption that Timmy will already know and possess all of the tools in order to craft the performance that he will want.
So you can effectively communicate.
So
and be
he
able
will
to,
basically say to Timmy,
right.
do you have any questions? And Timmy will either say yes or no, and if it's no, then the music director
Assumes.
will play through the song, and that'll be it, especially in such a condensed rehearsal process. So that's sort of the ways in which, at the highest level of theater, the job of the music director becomes creative and administrative. But in the very early stages of theaters, the job of a music director is really administrative things like, this is how we teach. You can't eat the sandwich right now. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, and I've done
It's a really good
theater.
analogy. I wonder who Timmy is. Yeah. He's in all of us.
We've all met Timmy.
I am Timmy. You are Timmy.
All of us who have done children's theater
Timmy.
has met our Timmy.
Yeah, no, but see, I'm sure that when it came down to choosing the program, that all of that was considered, no doubt. With you being such a bright individual, I can see that all of what you said came down to choosing writer, and that became the school for you, which is great.
And writer's also very cool because of their because they're in New Jersey.
Yeah.
We have master classes once a week, and they bring in casting agents from like Telsey and like really big casting agents listen to the kids and give advice. They bring in composers to do workshops. They bring in just people to talk to the kids. And while the music direction kids, it's not explicitly geared to us, for a music direction student, the benefit of that is you pick up an awful lot of information that you can use and synthesize sort of through osmosis. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
And in the sense that what casting directors are saying tend to be incredibly helpful for you, because it increases your awareness of how can you make yourself most suited to helping people succeed, which truly should be kind of the job of a music director, is to make sure that the actor feels comfortable in the music.
Yeah.
And that's a very sort of simple job and a very simple philosophy, which is not consistent throughout all music directors.
Right.
That's what I tend to believe that my job is, which is, I think, makes it easier, because then the extent of how much I have to care extends exclusively to the question of, is the actor comfortable? Can the music be sung consistently? And if it can, is there anything that could allow the music to be communicated more effectively to the audience?
Wonderful.
And if all those questions are yes, then I tend to just sort of sit back and trust the actor to have the training in order to do what they need to do in order to make that happen. And the nice thing about Rider is it's allowed me to become intensely aware of what that training is on a very finite level, so that if I do need to change anything, I can change it using the vernacular that they will be able to process in their own method. Because I tend to believe that an actor will always make a better choice than I will. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because obviously
they're being highlighted, right?
I am not an actor.
Right.
I have not taken ballet 3. I cannot communicate through dance. You know what I mean? I am in total harmony 4.
Yeah.
Which is why no actor's going, wow, I wonder what the function of that chord is, you know? So
exactly. Nobody's they're
it's
not
all different. I'm so sorry.
You almost got killed.
Just grabbing the water.
That's the same with
Just on the mic.
Ramin. What's his name? Ramin from Phantom. What's his last name? How do you pronounce his last name? Karamlu. The dude. We were watching something the other day. He didn't even know what he was singing. He just knew that. Oh, these are the notes I have to hit. Well, he didn't know what note he was singing.
He can't read music, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
How wild is that?
What
a concept.
I mean, he played Chris. Chris and I were watching. His Jean Valjean is unbelievable.
He's got a very you know what it is I think it's that he very much knows how to use his voice dramatically, separate from the notion of what acting is with a capital A. He's able to use his voice to accent drama, and he makes very clever decisions in terms of things like, how does my use of vibrato affect this moment dramatically, which is what really makes him so effective, right? He's
knows.
Incredibly intelligent about the decisions that he makes, which is why sort of like when his big note hits in like what's that song right at the beginning of Les Mis where he's like, I shouldn't have taken the bread. What's that one? Valjean's soliloquy.
Is that the one of him in the church? The one of him in the church where he's belting the bee.
Yeah, and he does something like, this is all I have lived for, this is all I have known, and the known is a straight tone where the rest of it was vibrato.
Yes,
it really accents it, and everyone who's listening goes, aha! And the reason they do that is because people mark change more than they mark tone. So essentially, if something is something and then it becomes something else, we'll notice the something else more than the original something.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, and the fact that, I mean, how does that man belt a B straight toned for like 6 to 8 seconds?
Takes a big old breath.
I know. Yeah, it definitely does.
Big old breath. There was a choir teacher in high school that told me to breathe from my anus.
That is the extent of the diaphragm.
Take a breath. Let it fill, baby.
Oh my gosh! Yes.
There's a vocal teacher in my school that tells kids that they can fix any problem they have by learning to breathe better. Yeah. Which is fair, you know.
Sports.
I too could learn how to breathe better.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, drink water as well. That is another big one. Drink water.
Hydrate. Always important.
Sleep. It's all those things. Well, anyway, I'm enjoying this conversation. I really am. I thought to mention as well to people who were curious in the musical. What is it? Musical. What's your major again? Remind me.
Music direction.
Music direction for musical theater. Only
you could just call it music direction.
Music
really,
direction.
That's the only part. It's not like because in
I'm trying to be all official. That's what I do.
No, that's great, but it's not like music direction for a jazz band, and that's a separate thing. It's just sort of music direction. You know what I mean?
There you go. So music direction at Rider. You mentioned to me only 2 because the program.
So the program
only 2
is
get
very
in.
small and very intensive. They
Wow, 2.
Yeah, they accept 2 kids per year. The problem with the music direction major is you don't really know it's there unless you're looking for it.
Right.
Which is both a positive and negative, which means that if kids are looking for it, they want to do it.
Which makes it even harder. Well, 2 people.
Well, they don't, but not a huge number of people apply because it's a very specific
I'm sure it's
subset.
still hundreds. If not. No, maybe not.
It really is a very specific niche.
Yeah.
It is something that people tend to fall into doing after they've graduated.
Interesting.
And it's mainly just kids that have had a good experience doing it in high school that end up wanting to do it, you know?
Yeah.
So
very interesting.
It's also a very hard program.
Yeah, you mentioned it's very intensive.
Due to the way that the major is structured. So essentially how it kind of works is that the school has accompanists. An accompagnist, for those of you who don't know, looking at you, Tiger. Is people who play piano for either a solo instrumentalist or a singer.
You're a pro, man. That's your audience right there.
Hey there, world.
Yep.
I keep bumping the mic. I'm sorry.
You are ruining the show. You're so confident you're ruining it.
And so the school has accompanists they hire, and these people are incredibly good, incredibly professional, and very talented. Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is that they essentially we play for classes for musical theater and essentially do the same jobs as the same people that the accompanists hire.
Yep.
And
that was sorry. We were continually
is that about
rolling.
the SD card?
No,
thing?
we were
Was
rolling the cameras still. Yeah. It's good.
What are you doing with those things? Sorry, that's not okay.
You're just the guest.
I'm just so curious as to your whole thing. So professional. I feel like
well, so if people don't know, we have a 2-camera system.
This is great. Do they know this?
I don't know. Maybe
Heard
they don't.
Here,
it's
folks.
subconscious. 2-camera system. Basically, what we do is these cameras. These are just DSLR cameras, so they typically tap out around 30 minutes. So we have to time it. So since nobody's operating my camera. No, not my camera, your camera. I have to operate it from here. So when it reaches about 30 minutes, I have to...
We have a DIY operation here, folks.
There you go. Now you clearly understand. We are understaffed.
We are understaffed.
I'm just kidding. But no, it works out.
Put out an ad for some backstage. You'll find some BFA kid that needs a job.
Yeah, really. That's funny.
So... Oh, no.
Lost your train of thought. You were talking about... definition of accompanist.
Oh, right. So essentially, we're plopped in the same role as those professional accompanists.
Sure.
And they're sort of like, okay, you're going to come in and you're going to suck, but by doing it enough, you're going to get better.
Yeah, right.
So that's a good model for someone like me, who very much thrives in that type of environment, because again, it falls into the fact that someone else's performance depends on my accountability and my competence. So it's it really works for me.
Yeah, you gotta be good.
But the problem is that the musical theater kids are all aware to some extent that their accompanist is a student and that they are learning and that, they're doing his best. But let's say, going back to our friend Timmy, who's 18-year-old and a budding musical theater major, he's got to sing,
Yeah.
Mr. Cellophane, and his performance is going to be encumbered if, I can't think of another name, let's call him John at the piano, is not performing up to par.
Yeah.
But, so in that way, it tends to be very isolating when you enter a program like that when you're 18.
Yeah.
Which is why it has such a high dropout rate.
Interesting.
And the program itself isn't necessarily concerned with saving the stragglers.
Sure. I'm sure they're not. They have to continue
again,
the major.
because our performance directly influences how well the kids can do. And we all a large part of my major is also playing for vocal lessons and accompanying students so that we can get an awareness, again, going back to our ability to communicate.
Sure.
So that we're able to do things like understand how singing works, so that if there, God forbid, is a vocal problem that may arise, we're able to possess the tools in order to communicate and solve it. Or we're able to understand the input that actors give us and translate that into a binary thing that can be solved.
Interesting. It's very valuable information for anybody considering this. It really is. It really is. The whole point of this show is to be informative.
No,
and
it's very informative.
I feel like it is.
If there are any music directors out there,
what was that for?
There you go.
Oh,
I want it to be welcoming.
You were saying...
I want it to be like,
hello,
okay,
welcome.
I was in your shoes once. Okay. I was John.
This could have been so many interpretations. I didn't know if you meant I'm it.
I'm your resource. I'm very sorry.
I'm sure you are a resource, though. If anybody needs help, he's got you.
Truly.
He's a good guy.
Justin for all 3 of the schools.
Yeah. It's a lot. I'm sure it's all a lot, but...
Learn how to sight read.
Yeah. Quick. Hurry.
Fast.
Yeah, as fast as you can. Yeah. I want to go into Broncway. What the Broncway is. That sounds like a Bronco or something, but Broncway.
Yeah, so...
If you want to share, how did that come up?
So the mascot of my school used to be a Bronco.
Did it really?
Yeah, but as you can imagine, there's another very famous school that tends to also have a Bronco as its primary logo. So lo and behold, my school got sued. And in the ensuing argument, my school had the idea that our logo would then become a Bronc.
A Bronc.
Bronc.
What? A single? What is that?
Just a Bronc.
Oh.
Sort of like a Bronco, but without the oh.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the
I guess it
logo
just doesn't matter.
So the
at that
logo
point.
of Ryder is a bronc, and so.
Oh, now I'm getting the name now. Ryder.
So for those of you that aren't quite as quick as our friend Evan here, yeah, that's right. He's very proud of himself.
Oh my gosh!
We
look
here
at
the musical theater department of Rider University all feel that we are headed for Broadway, but until we're there, we are stuck with our logo, and we are operating on the Broncway.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
This is definitely the most colorful interview we've had. I love it. You're bringing life to this. It's great.
And so my first semester was very eye-opening in the sense that all the kids that I was talking to, is it okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
That all the kids I was talking to were all giving me some version of the same story, which is that they were happy with the education they were receiving, but they wished that they had more opportunities in order to implement the raw skills which they were being taught into, a viable product, which was the shows, because education for all artists usually take place in two stages, which is technical development and then practical implementation. Right. So it's sort of like if you're an artist, you go to school and they're like, this is what shading is.
Yeah.
I'm not an artist. I don't know what you've done. But then they're like, draw an apple, and that's sort of technical skill and then practical implementation. And that's how it works on its most fundamental level.
Right.
So obviously the problem with being a musical theater student as opposed to being an artist is there are a million apples. But unfortunately only 15 roles in Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah. So there's an inherent amount of competition involved.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And the BFA machine is very difficult for students because it is the first time in their life that people are assessing them for the profitability of themselves as a product.
Exactly. Exactly.
And if they are not succeeding in university, the implication often is that they are not going to be profitable in real life.
Right. Which is that's
true
demoralizing
to some extent. It is not.
It's not 100%
It's not
false. No.
finite.
No.
People thought Brian Darcy James couldn't sing at his university. So
who's laughing now? Look out!
Ha ha.
Yeah, Broadway great.
Broadway great. So
sit down. You're rocking the boat.
I often feel like the hardest time in a musical theater student's life is probably his first year at university, because it's this notion that everyone is the most talented kid from where they come from.
Right.
Everyone.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it's an accomplishment to get to a school, and they come from a small pond. Right.
And it's the first time that they realize, on some fundamental level, that having talent does not make you special.
Yeah.
Which is an incredibly difficult concept for anyone to wrap your mind around.
Yeah.
Because I am a person that does not believe that talent is innate. I believe that talent is something which is a word describing a mixture of skill and work ethic, right? And work ethic feeds into skill, and if you get skill, hopefully it'll motivate you enough to have work ethic to get more. So it's sort of like a circular cycle, like that.
Right.
But every time I talk to sort of the kids around me, and not just freshmen, but sophomores, juniors, seniors, I got this really deep notion that a lot of the kids were unhappy because they felt that they weren't being provided the opportunities to implement the technical skills that they were learning, because the school viewed that they did not either have the look or the technical skill to be cast in something as opposed to someone else. It is also the first time that many kids have had to seriously contend with type.
Yeah.
And that's very hard because a lot of kids have to age into their type. That's
very interesting.
Not everyone is born a grandmother.
No. But
some people's types will eventually be grandmother, where if your type is doughy-eyed ingenue, you will do very well in college.
Right.
And it's the fact that a lot of kids, obviously at age 18, of course, don't have the foresight and understanding to realize that sometimes you just have to wait for your type, for you to age into your type, or to be okay with what your type is that not everyone is an ingenue.
Right. And
some
colleges
people are
want that.
Character actresses, you know? But the problem is that if you're a character actress, you've got to wait for a role to come along that you can act in. And those aren't
They're not
as
that
common because there's a million roles for Laura Osnes, but not a million roles for Nathan Lane.
Right.
Right?
Right, exactly.
That's why you don't see Nathan Lane on Broadway every second of the day.
No,
right?
he's iconic. He's iconic for what he does.
He's iconic for what he does. And part of the model, and I think part of the reason the Rider is a good school, is because they accept people that are quote-unquote iconic.
Yeah. Which is neat.
And that they believe will become, whether not immediately, but eventually, will become people that will age into a type which will become profitable.
Wonderful.
You know, there's this notion that everything has to happen like right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mostly because they're 18 and musical theater students are like, I use the analogy the musical theater students are always on a yellow light. So it's sort of like, you know that feeling of panic you get right as you cross the line and the light turns yellow and you have to decide whether to stop or go?
Yeah.
That's them, but like all the time.
Yeah. No.
So it's a very stressful...
Me.
No, right.
It's both.
Right.
It's
so
everybody.
It's a very stressful sort of environment. And, you know, I think that my school, but more than my school, the musical theater BFA machine, doesn't spend a great deal of time paying attention to topics such as it's okay to not be doing things right now. It's okay to focus on technical development and not have practical implementation. It is okay that you are not Laura Osnes. What is not okay is if you end up resenting yourself for not being her.
Yes.
And what I encountered at my school, which is what I found most demoralizing, was a lot of kids who ended up resenting themselves for not being who they thought they were. Mm-hmm. And that was a really sad thing for me, you know, because, you know, I think everyone to some extent is very talented, and everyone at my school is very talented. I just think not everyone is immediately inherently profitable. And not everyone is immediately and inherently a product. And that's a very important distinction to make. So
absolutely.
That was a big reason that I, with a whole bunch of folks in my school, unilaterally tried to come together to do something for the common good, which was to provide a forum and a pool of resources whereby students, if they were sufficiently motivated enough, would have the tools at their disposal in order to create performance opportunities to provide themselves the practical implementation which would run concurrently with their technical development.
Which is amazing.
It
is awesome.
And next year is the first year that we're officially doing it, because we spent most of last semester organizing it and trying to get an apparatus.
Well, congratulations, I must say, because that's pretty neat.
Thank you.
It's really neat.
It was also weird because I am never at a lack for things to do at my school.
Yeah.
Because right now...
Sounds like it. Sounds like you're a little too busy.
since the last kid dropped out, I'm currently the only music direction major at my school. And I'm the only one who has been there for more than a year.
Wow. You heard it first, folks. Wow.
Here on the 1 in 20 show. Why did you call it the 1 in 20 show?
I read it for you.
1 in 20?
It's like 1 in 20 people will be a millionaire. We don't judge. We don't view it as money, but by success.
Yeah.
We're trying to find the 1 in 20.
I just thought that was like a cute little spiel. I didn't think it was like, you know, I didn't think that was like the brand.
Oh,
that's cool.
Yeah.
No, I'm super here
speaking
for
of speaking of brands, that's why you fit right in.
The 1 in 20 show.
The 1 in 20 show. Support it or don't. Don't be in the middle.
We
no,
have
I'm just
coffee
kidding.
mugs.
Oh yeah. Look.
Show him. Yeah, show the mug. You see?
I'm so vain.
That's what we in the industry call branding, folks.
I'm making my brand. Look out. It's coming.
What font is your logo?
So
Helvetica?
it is no, it's actually created. It was a created font. So we had
look at you.
My brother's friend came in Tertief. Shout out came in Tertief. He's 15 years old. Did the caricature and the logo.
It's amazing.
And yeah, he created the whole thing. So
For
I'm like
$15 in a Pi 5?
I can't disclose the money, but it was wonderful to have that, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's building a brand, but that's what we're talking about. That's why people like you and a bunch of the other guests I've had on and will have are people who share that vision.
Yeah.
And in a weird way are all kind of in the same small pool. It's very weird to think of I even weirdly feel like I've been connected to you from afar, just from kind of knowing
Ages,
you.
yeah.
Even though, and I think it's because of where we live in a sense in Santa Clarita. And
Santa
this
Clarita is
community.
very insulated.
It
in
is.
the sense that, and really,
even though it's large,
it's a good model for a lot of places because when you spend enough time in a place like New York, everyone tends to start to know each other, and the thing that tends to cut a lot of talented people out of roles are experiences that other people have had with them. That's probably the most important point I could ever give, is that talent does not matter so much as how much people like you and how good of a product you are able to deliver. It is incredibly easy to get hired once. And anyone is talented enough to get hired once. It is very difficult to become a career musical theater actor because it means you have to forge enough personal relationships with people that they would want to hire you continuously.
Which is the challenge. It is challenging, but I think if you come in with the right mindset, like something we chat about a lot is the fact that what makes you a well-rounded entity is when you're able to bring your skill set and your work ethic coupled with your moral and
just don't let your ego get in the way of your success.
Exactly. It's bringing in the professional side of yourself to where you are able to communicate with anybody.
No, absolutely.
You don't have to always agree, but don't let that be a pride thing that affects you from making a connection, because you never know where that small connection can lead you. It's nuts. It's crazy.
People talk in our industry.
Yeah.
The Royal Hour industry.
Yeah.
About this notion of networking. And the more time I spend in our industry, the more time it occurs to me that networking is less... It is an active something you have to do, but more than that, there's a very subliminal kind of networking that you can do, which consists of forging relationships you believe will be to some way inherently beneficial for you in the future.
Yeah.
I think that's why this show in some ways is great, because it's sort of like a database and an apparatus in order to build relationships. I mean? Well, I mean, isn't that what you're doing? You're building relationships with people.
It definitely is. It definitely is.
In its purest form.
And my thing is that everybody, and something that's been valuable for me, and I think you can echo this, is something that's been very valuable for me growing up in the arts and really taking it to a head in the last 5 years, has been that I never wanted to have beef with anybody. And it helped me. It really helped me, because now I don't agree with everybody all the time, but by having an open relationship with people and being friends and not letting things affect our friendship all the time, it has totally been a big thing. And that's why I wanted to do the show in a lot of ways.
So a very interesting thing about what my job is that there are, and I'm actually could not be more thrilled about this, is I've reached a point in my career where the people that I interact with and I create art with are not my friends.
Immediate friends, is that what you're...
No.
Or just in general?
They are people that are there to do a job, and that they go to work and then they go home, because the product that they are putting out is so important to them that they do not want to let things like relationships get in the way.
Yeah.
So part of the difficult thing for me about this summer contract that I know we're not on that yet. Do you want to do the intro to the summer contract?
I can right now before you want to get into it.
Do you want
to? Sure. So
see, I'm respecting the talking points.
Thank you very much.
You showed me on the iPad. And I'm look at you go.
Yeah, there you go. I always show my my outlines to my guests, so that they're familiar.
So appreciative.
But yeah, basically, now that we've covered everything with Ryder, I mentioned in the intro about Millbrook Playhouse in Pennsylvania, which you have been fortunate to be involved in.
Very fortunate.
And their entire summer stock theater thing that they've been doing this summer. I don't know if you want to give like a little rundown.
Yeah, sure.
Like a little promotional of sorts for them, because I know
Well, I mean, the season's over. They're done.
Yeah. I know that they're done.
They're all
you
home
mentioned
now.
That, but you did mention one thing I think would be valuable is for my listeners, especially who are more West Coast. You mentioned that theater in like Philly and Pennsylvania and stuff is starting to build up.
Yeah.
How is that happening at Millbrook? I had to make sure I got it right because I got it wrong earlier.
Millbrook is one of the most iconic places I've ever worked. Is Millbrook was a barn in 1920, like a literal barn.
I saw a picture. It's beautiful.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And in 1920, the big joke was, we did a cabaret where we were like, the theme was 1920, so everyone dressed in cow costumes, because in 1920 there would have only been cows at the barn. I thought it was funny. It was my idea. Not to brag, my idea. I thought it was very funny.
That's very funny.
That's funny. The actual theme was speakeasy, so I played in a cow costume.
Okay. That's funny.
So
That's funny. That reminds me of, by the way, White Christmas, and that set that they used in White Christmas, and I think it was also in another film, another older film.
Yeah.
I don't think it was 20s. That was probably the 50s, I want to say. But it reminds me of that. If people have seen that movie, the place reminds me of. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Have you not?
Let's take a poll. Have you seen White Christmas?
I'll throw up a graphic.
Like the Instagram polls, yes or no.
I'll throw up the questions thing. Oh my gosh. The thing
Listen, put those graphics to good work.
Yeah, they work.
So, Millbrook stands sort of in a place between equity and non-equity theater.
Okay, yep.
They have some equity contracts that give out a few EMC points, but the vast majority of the people they hire are non-equity.
Okay.
They are a professional summer stock theater, which essentially means that they have a product that they believe is part of their brand that they want to give out, right? And it's sort of been, it was a very interesting experience for me because I just sort of emailed them.
Yeah.
And I got hired.
As somebody from our generation does, I find myself emailing a lot.
Yeah, emailing
and
tends
inquiries
to be. That's why I'm not a huge text message guy, as you know.
Yeah.
But I'm very quick about emails, just because that tends to be where we live and where the vast majority of business that we do takes place. But I just sort of emailed the artistic director of Millbrook and a whole bunch of other theaters, and I was very fortunate that at the time of my emailing, Millbrook was just missing music staff. So I emailed at the right time to fill that opportunity.
Yeah, there's an in. Right there, yeah.
So
that's cool.
I tend to believe that the way that those sorts of things work is that every opportunity or every group tends to have its own ecosystem.
Yeah.
And that the way that people work repeatedly is by filling a place in that ecosystem, which is better than what was there before.
Sure.
And the way you get into the ecosystem is finding something in that ecosystem which is missing. In this case, for me, it was a music director.
Wonderful.
I was younger by about 8 to 10 years, I think, than all of the other people working.
So that's similar to Jimmy with Once, because Jimmy was just mentioning that with Once, he's 10 to 15 years removed than most people, and most of them are union, and he is now lucky enough to be getting his equity card through it, and similar. Anyway.
No, absolutely. You tend to find that people who are union are much older.
Yeah.
Mostly because quite a few people spend a bit of time as non-equity, because there is money in non-equity, just not enough money in non-equity to do things like raise a family, which eventually, when performers get to a certain age, they sort of get tired.
Yeah.
Which is understandable, you know?
8 shows a week for years. Yeah.
So Millbrook hired a run of people of all different ages. And it was the first time in my life that I was responsible for a product.
Yeah.
Which was, things like, if the singing is not good, it is my responsibility in order to ensure that it is. And there were a bunch of tools that were at my disposal, such as fines and things like that, in order to assure the quality of the product. That was a very new experience for me.
Yeah.
Because, people treated me with a certain deference because of what my position was. And it was weird for me because, I know me.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like a fundamentally different person. but it was a very different environment because people there were truly there to do a job.
Yeah.
The workday was 9 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Gosh.
Rehearsals generally ran for 12 hours. Then we did a show.
Amazing. I mean, that's huge part of your life for that summer, man.
It was
That's
all
crazy.
I did.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't do anything else. So
it was that literally
wow.
I was there to do theater. I kind of feel like I aged 10 years in 10 weeks, you know?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
it was like
yeah, I am now a working man. Yeah.
Kind of, but it was
Yeah.
just a really intense experience for me because it was the first time in my life that and I told you about this, Suze, is that it was the first time in my life that people actively sought to create relationships with me.
Yeah.
The way that I had always created relationships
Sure.
with people. And I had never thought of myself as like that guy. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Because again, I know me. you know?
Of course you do.
And
Yeah.
I don't.
It sounds like you're very self-aware too, which is cool because that's not.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean it. In a
No,
bad way,
I am
but,
very. Yeah.
But I think it's valuable because it goes hand in hand with knowing your worth, which we've already talked about, and you building your own brand around yourself and making yourself marketable. It's the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is the entire package.
So
Right.
the cool thing about
Interesting.
Millbrook was it was a very good litmus test for my education as a collective whole. Because I got to see the implementation of all the skills I believed I was being taught. So I had to interface with an orchestra. I had to interface with actors. We had a different cast come in for every show. We had some overlap, but by and large, a different set of performers. So I think I interact with about 200, 300 different people.
Wonderful.
Just on the performance actor side of it.
Right.
You know, there were things like
great,
grappling with the orchestra, you know what I mean? Doing things, and it was all done trying as hard as I could to convince people that I was not as young as I was.
Amen. Isn't that what we always do? I feel like my mental age is 5 years.
Hence my whole thing that I've got going on right now.
I can't, so you're lucky. I can't.
Thank you.
It will
Thank
not
you.
grow. One day it will grow. It won't grow yet.
Eat some beans.
Beans.
I heard beans make your beard grow. Someone told me that.
The sprouts coming through my pores now. Speaking of baked beans or lima beans?
I don't know. There were an Amish person told me that in Pennsylvania. So in the area where my summer stock contract was, there was a very large Dutch Amish population that did things like plant corn and make ice cream and ride horses and there was a place outside the Walmart a stable where they'd tie their horses up and they'd go and buy some groceries and they'd come out and they'd plop them on Fido's back and then they'd just into the night, you know what I mean? So it was like
elaborate nicknames. Tim, John, Fido. Who's next?
Fido is an actual name. Though I don't know if Fido was a dog in a movie or was Fido a horse.
Fido's a dog, I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
But we can name a horse that. It's your illustration. So
why don't we do Seabiscuit instead?
Yeah, there you go. That is a horse's name.
I know one.
You do.
There was also a racetrack. Sorry. There was also.
Peter's over there dying.
There was also a racetrack where a bunch of horses ran around.
Yeah.
One of them's name was Seabreeze. He was my favorite. I didn't bet.
What does this have to do with the? Has nothing to do with the Playhouse, does it?
No, I'll get back to the subject of the interview that
I was like,
you're trying
does
to get
this
me to
have?
do.
You mentioned a barn.
Okay, right.
I didn't know
Right.
if.
So the barn. And so whenever something bad happened in a show, it was up to our creative department to kind of address it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's
Sure.
like if someone had a voice crack, we'd have to be like, "Hi, what happened?"
Yeah.
And it was very awkward for me because I'm a person that inherently avoids confrontation.
Yeah.
Inherently.
It's hard.
And I think that's one of my biggest professional flaws is that I very much avoid confrontation at the cost of what the product is. Because as I mentioned before about my own personal philosophies, that if something functionally works, isn't dramatically obtuse, and the performer feels comfortable doing it, generally speaking, I sort of am very hands-off in that regard. Because it's not even that I don't care, but I just pick the battles that I want to fight.
Sure.
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 Sort of like you with your SD card cameras,
Yeah.
Pick the battles.
You pick them, and you don't want to. For me, it's just money. We have them available, and they work, and it's still a good.
That's kind of how I feel like my business model is. It's around and it kind of works,
Yeah.
Which I'm super here for. So oftentimes trying to interface with people older than me was a new challenge. Giving direction to people that were older than me, that were like measurably older than me, that had been doing theater since before I had been alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was now in a leadership position that had to like communicate and have the skills in order to talk to them. You know what I mean? So that was very different and complicated.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. It was. I'm glad that that part is over. I'm excited to go back to school because again, the interesting thing about my major is I feel like my entire major is technical development, and what I did this summer
was practical.
Was true.
Yeah.
Practical implementation.
Awesome.
You know what I mean? So I think it's going to be because I'm going back to school with a very definite set of ideas on what I believe I excelled in.
Yeah.
In the environment I was, and things that I believe I was deficient or lacking in. And this way, because my major is this is another nice thing about what my major is because it's kind of me in the wilderness, I can gear my education towards the areas that I believe will most help me.
And, that's very key. I mean, typically school should be learning what you need to learn so that you can then apply it.
Yeah.
And some schools believe, we've chatted a little bit about it already, but some schools believe in a duality in those philosophies. Some are more knowledge, like for film, Chapman is known more as a theory school.
Yeah.
Whereas USC is more known for hands-on, even though it's not necessarily that. It's very interesting how that plays even in musical theater.
No,
but
absolutely.
It's crazy. Anyway, as we start to wind this down, because we've already been going for an hour.
He's reel it back, Tiger.
Now we gotta, now we gotta pull the reins back on Seabiscuit and slow this train down. I wanted to ask you. So you got one more year left.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Future plans, future goals. What's gonna happen when you graduate?
I don't know. I don't really think too far ahead. I know that seems contradictory to everything that I've already said.
Yeah.
But I really don't think too far ahead. I want to say I set immediate goals, and then I'm just sort of easy breezy and let what happens kind of happens.
Yeah.
I believe that people who have a very locked idea of what their future will be tend to get very locked into it.
Yeah.
And who knows?
Yeah.
What it is. I feel like it's much better to be open to the possibility of a future.
I'm glad you're optimistic like that. It's very valuable, I think, to be. You're very driven, but you're also optimistic.
I am very optimistic. Sort of the scary thing is that over the past kind of year, I've started to kind of feel, which is nice, but is also very weird, is I've sort of started to feel like my career in this thing that I'm doing is an inevitability. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not to say that things can't go wrong, but it's just felt like all the input that I've been receiving has led me towards the conclusion that I have a product that is worth taking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is scarier because the question now is no longer, do I have the ability to do it? The question now is, how do I create the system which will allow me the best chances of success?
Exactly.
Which I think goes into a lot of my philosophy about just not planning. It was sort of like, I'm a big fan of creating week-long, 3-month, and 6-month-long goals. Mm-hmm. I don't really create year-long goals because I feel like it's better to assess, and when you sort of say things like, I want to be on Broadway in 1 year, you'll sort of turn down a lot of opportunities that end up coming your way because you're so focused on an ending product that you want to achieve. And I'm a big advocate that I don't really think Broadway is the end-all be-all of musical theater, you know what I mean? And I think that there's an awful lot of work out there in regional circuits for people who are very good and talented.
There's money.
And,
there's still money
and what
there,
an amazing opportunity to go and spend 3 months in a place that I would never have visited, Mill Hall, PA.
Yeah.
Truly a rural environment, and I really do feel very lucky to have had that opportunity and to get to engage with a community.
Yeah.
That is, like a lot of the Canyon Theater Guild's mission, which is out here, is that they provide theater to families, and that they've been providing theater to family for 80 or 90 years. And where that's concerned, Millbrook very much shares that deep sense of pride that they are the only, really in the country, the only professional summer stock theater that is in a barn and is in Mill Hall, PA, and that serves a collection of people which would have no access to theater otherwise. Like none, you know? And I think that, and I think that the pride they feel in that sort of mission is very justified. And I think it's very real because I think art is cathartic. And I think that art has the ability to have a conversation which we do not have the tools to have at the moment, you know?
Exactly. Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah. And it's sort of all about people's ability and willingness to engage intellectually with a topic that they don't necessarily want to talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think for an area like Mill Hall, PA, which tends to run demographically conservative, a lot of the shows that we did this summer posed a lot of questions, which I think was good points of engagement for a community which hadn't necessarily considered them.
Yeah.
And that's a very valuable apparatus of art, right? Is it allows you to have conversations.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I know that my brain has been fried by all of the really good discussions. No, seriously, good discussions that we've had. And I'm very thankful, Justin, that you were on the show today.
I am so thankful I was on the show today.
I'm glad that you
Sorry, I bumped your little boop boop here.
No.
Your
Peter's all right.
What's it called? Breath protector? Pop filter? Pop filter.
Ah, there
Boom,
you are.
baby.
There you are.
I know audio recording.
Yeah, there you go. I wanted
So sorry.
I want to end the show as I always do.
everything.
Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and now Twitter at 1
Oh,
and 20
bless.
Show.
There's a Twitter.
There's a Twitter.
What's your handle?
It's at 1 and 20 Show.
The same as everything
There
else.
you go. The same as
Great.
everything else.
Brand.
And I thought it would be fun because a lot of you have wondered what this room is that we're in.
Yes,
I'm gonna take you
turn
on
her
A
around.
virtual tour. Here's Chris. Chris, you. Hello. You're blocked by the camera. Slide that way. Chris, you and that camera. I'm gonna zoom all the way out. I have to get up out of my chair for this.
Please be here for the premiere panoramic shot of the 1 in 20 show. Woo!
There's a lot going on over there. Susan Thomas, Susan, and Peter Lacombe. And there you are.
What a show! What an experience!
Back to my mic. This, my friends, because then nobody can hear me, has been the 1 in 20 Show. Thank you for watching. Follow along on Facebook, Instagram,
and now Twitter.
At 1 in 20 Show. And thank you guys for watching.